The X-Men are a serious bunch, often to a fault. There's something about the epic superhero opera of the oppressed mutant underclass that suits po-faced doom and gloom, but rather marvelously, Rob Liefeld took it upon himself to mess with the formula, introducing Deadpool and captivating the fan base immediately. Now Deadpool sits at the zenith of his powers, and with a universally popular film under his belt and renewed interest in the comics, it'd be easy to imagine that the road here was unblemished. But the reality is that the Merc with the Mouth has some serious skeletons that the creators would rather be kept in the closet. I'm Ben from What Culture, and here are 10 things Marvel wants you to forget about Deadpool. Number 10. He's a total rip-off of a DC character. To be fair, Wade Wilson is actually just one of the most popular in a long line of comic book characters that are total rip-offs of an existing hero. When Liefeld brought his pool design to Fabian Nicieza, the writer instantly recognized him. The mask, the pirate boots, the color scheme, and the MO were all identical to Teen Titans villain Deathstroke. Instead of warning Liefeld away from potential litigation for copyright infringement, Nicieza leaned into the similarity, even giving Deadpool a real name that's very similar to Deathstroke, who's known to his friends as Slade Wilson. It's almost uncanny. Deadpool is Deathstroke to a T. He might have evolved to the point that he's fairly distinct from the overly serious Deathstroke, but it's still a rather unfortunate thing to have hanging over the character. Number 9. That time he lost his powers. It seems like every superhero has to go through the rigmarole of losing their superpowers for a bit, so writers can explore what makes them tick when they're vulnerable. Sometimes it works, but there are also some less good stories, like the brief period Deadpool was cured of his healing factor. Being cured of his immortality also meant that the horrible scarring, courtesy of the Weapon X experiments that gave him the healing factor, went away, and thus all the angst that underpinned the goofiness of Deadpool went away too, in favor of a weird Zen thing where he was readily accepting of death. And that's not fun. Number 8. The whole Agent X thing. Deadpool's phenomenally successful solo series was cancelled out of the blue with, rather appropriately, number 69. Lol. A few months later, it was relaunched under the new title of Agent X, with the first issue hitting stands in 2002. Along with new writer Gail Simone, the book appeared to have a new star, the mysterious titular mutant assassin who we were supposed to believe was Pool minus the cool. Turns out the whole thing was trolling on Marvel's part, and Agent X was actually a completely different guy, who immediately disappeared off the face of the earth when Wade returned properly. Number 7. He was fired as a Herald of Galactus. Now, it may be funny as an observer, but just imagine how irritating it is to work alongside Mr. Poole. The constant wisecracks, the fourth wall breaks to no one in particular, the fact that he can do whatever he wants because he can't die. You'd probably get mad too, so it's not surprising that his mouth has gotten him into, and out of, some rather hairy situations. On one such occasion, he was charged with the duty of being a Herald of Galactus, the being previously responsible for the deaths of Peter Parker, Steve Rogers, and a handful of the Fantastic Four, among others. All he had to do was help wipe out a planet's population in preparation for Galactus' arrival. That's not too hard, except he didn't stop talking. Ever. Just banal, tedious nonsense. Endlessly. He forced the cosmic entity to tell him to shut up before being promptly dismissed, and that's got to be a record for being annoying. Number 6. X-Men Origins Wolverine. It might have given us Ryan Reynolds as the future Deadpool, but X-Men Origins Wolverine was a crime against eyeballs. Not only did it kill off Reynolds' sort of Deadpool for some reason, it then turned him into a hulking superweapon with his mouth sewn shut, because there's nothing quite like almost giving the fans what they want and then snatching it away and totally ruining a character because that'll show you to get your hopes up and care about anything ever. The whole thing was astonishingly wrong-headed, and to think they actually added a post-credits scene to tease the character returning. Nice self-awareness. I suppose you could call it a shit interpretation of a beloved comic book character for wankers. Hashtag shit interpretation of a beloved comic book character for wankers. Number 5. Most of his superpowers. Deadpool's skill set is one of the more loosely defined in the Marvel Universe, especially for a mutant, since the majority of them tend to have one particular ability. In contrast, Wade Wilson seems to have a fairly generic set of skills. There's the healing factor that helps him never die, but other than that, exactly just what Deadpool can do is sort of a mystery. Sometimes writers toy with the idea of him having super strength somehow tied into the healing factor thing, which is mostly forgotten now. Sometimes he's also multilingual, an expert assassin, and a crazy good martial artist, and sometimes he's not. It's probably best not to think about it too much, to be honest. Number 4. His father is dead, but also isn't. Deadpool's family life has been in flux over the years. He's had a child, but she's often left out of continuity, and he's always said he likes to operate alone, except, of course, when he's teaming up with super buddies or alternate versions of himself. One thing that is concrete is that his father died when he was still a teenager, as revealed to Cable in Cable and Deadpool. This makes the fact that Loki later managed to curse him and claim to be his father all the more confusing, especially since the curse was broken when he reconciled with his real father. But he's meant to be what? Number 3. Actually, anything about his origins. If you think that Wolverine's backstory is complicated, he hasn't got a thing on Wade Wilson. The early years of Deadpool mostly remained a mystery until Original Sin filled in some details. Deadpool is a silly character. There's a little gallows humor in his jokes, but mostly he's meant to be light and drama-free, which made it a little jarring when Original Sin revealed that a younger, more confused Wade Wilson was tricked into killing his own parents, and he has no memory of it. That kind of darkness isn't really what you want with Deadpool. The rest of his origin is disputed, with conflicting stories having him as a crazy person who killed Wade Wilson and took his identity, or a son of a Canadian war hero drawn into mercenary life. Confusing. Number 2. Most of the comics are kind of crap. One of the major issues with Deadpool as a character hasn't so much been Wade Wilson himself, but the stories he appears in. Simply put, most of the Deadpool comics have been sort of terrible. He's a fan-favorite character thanks to his fourth wall-busting antics being all self-referential and all, but for the most part he's been the victim of fairly empty-headed plotting and characterization. The problem is, his concept just doesn't lend itself easily to an ongoing book, and frequently he gets stretched way too thin between multiple titles at a time, which makes for poor comics. Number 1. He was originally a villain. Deadpool is pretty much a fully fledged hero at this point, or at the very least, an anti-hero nuisance. It wasn't always that way though. Believe it or not, as if the Deathstroke comparisons weren't strong enough, Deadpool was introduced as a bad guy in New Mutants, exactly the same part Deathstroke played in the Teen Titans. Before he got all crazy and fourth wall breaking, he was even more of a Deathstroke analog, a regular villain threatening teenagers with a big old sword. Thankfully, a lot has changed since then, and the lovable idiot we have today couldn't be further from the grumpy child threatener of the olden days. And that's our list. Make sure you subscribe to the What Culture Comics YouTube channel for more lists like this, and don't forget to visit whatculture.com for daily news and articles. I'm Ben from What Culture, and thanks for watching.